secret blogazine in which I'm going to try out some ideas and develop some production methods. You know, I've done 30 years of producing print. I've worked in newspapers and magazines and so on, and I'm trying to bring that knowledge to the web. So, as I say, I don't think there are any unknowns left. I think that everything I need to do, I know how to do. It's just a question of being able to get there. So this is a blog, but I also thought I'd like to try it for a really sustained read, like a book. So this is a book called The Mabinogion, which is a 12th century Welsh manuscript. It's kind of Arthurian Welsh legends. I pulled the text off of Project Gutenberg on the web. Right. Project Gutenberg has all these great texts, but have you ever tried reading one in Project Gutenberg?
It's literally just a straight text file. You copy it into a notepad and it opens up a notepad and it's hell.
Yeah, it's hell. It's absolute hell to try and read these things. So what I thought was I'd try to take the same text and produce a readable version of it. I want to do the whole book. I have done so far about 100 pages of the book, which represents about 50 web pages. But here are my page turns. I can go to the next section or the previous section. You'll notice, again, I'm using Cambria in here because it's a really good readable face. You'll notice it's a double column layout. I'd rather have a 2-column layout than a 3-column layout. Interesting. The optimum width of a column for reading is probably about this. But you know, when you're reading something of this kind of character, you actually want to slow down a little bit. What you don't want to do is make reading so efficient that people just kind of skim through it. You actually want people to absorb it. And I've been noticing this myself. There are times when, you know, when we read a book, there are times when we slow down. If you're reading poetry, for example, you read poetry much, much slower than you read an action thriller where you want to get to the next shoot 'em up, bang sequence.
Right.
This kind of subtlety was not really possible on the web before, but it is now. And I actually find myself wanting to use it. It's really cool how close we are to getting to really bringing reading over to the web and making it a great experience. So I've done 50 pages of this. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you, let me bring.
And this is using IE8. It doesn't even matter because you said this page would load the embedded fonts.
It would load the embedded fonts in earlier versions, but I don't think the JavaScripts that I'm using for multi-column and for hyphenation will necessarily work with the earlier versions. Okay. I know they work with other browsers because I've tried it, but they don't work with earlier versions. Okay. And there's, you know, I'm uncovering bugs along the way also. So that's another good reason for doing this kind of project. So I'm kind of stress testing Internet Explorer and its display capabilities in a way that I guess nobody else in the team is, because they're actually building the thing. And what I'm doing is I'm taking it and exercising it and stressing it. You know, I have one page on here. The way I work on this is I lay the pages, I bring in a big chunk of text first, and then I chop it up into sections. Once I've done various global search and replace operations on it, because I want to replace inch marks and foot marks with proper typographers open and close quotes and things like that. So I do search and replace to clean all that stuff up. And then I bring it in and do HTML, and if you look at the HTML in here, so this is all the kind of head stuff, which is defining page numbers and calling the JavaScripts and setting up, using these two W3C logos to tell people that they're totally standards compliant.
And the tool you're using, this is new to IE8?
No, this tool is actually, this is Notepad++ I'm using here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. but
I see colorization, line numbers.
Yeah, actually,
but that's actually in the source code too. Like if you open a source code in IE8, you get this.
Yeah, that's
well,
right.
that's what I was going to ask, if it was the embedded one or not.
No, and Expression Web does the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, Expression Web. If you stay in the HTML view of Expression Web, it does the same thing. But I happen to.
So the point here is, like, instead of just garbage HTML, I just see classes defined for the UI.
There are a few bits of things in there, like this is an eAcute character, for example. So I've got to do the the code for that. You know, so there's a set of typographers' quotes. Open quotes is and/8220 semicolon, and closed quotes is and/8221 semicolon.
Of
right?
course.
Well, how friendly is that? You know, I mean, I really want a tool that just says, "Hey, you've done open quotes. I'm going to write the piece of code for you. You don't have to paste it." I had to paste each one of those in. Okay, so global search and replace helps me a lot, but try doing global search and replace, for example, for typographers' quotes. Because the opening quotes are different to the closing ones. So you have to do a global search and replace inch marks with and/8220. But, so find me the first one, replace that, but skip the next one and replace that. So if somebody could give me a replace every second one, as opposed to a global search and replace, then I could automate it. But I can't. Once I've done the first one, though, of course, I can then do a global search and replace all the remaining inches marks with the closing quotes. Right? Apostrophes are not as hard, but so there's a lot of stuff like that
Sure.
could be cleaned up. So what other things I want to do is I want to start feeding back this information to the authoring tools people. Yeah, I'd love it if in Word I could just spit out HTML that was that clean. I mean, this is as clean as it gets.
Sure.
There is not a single character of formatting in there at all. Not one. And I've been deliberate about trying to pull all that out. The CSS, you know, actually for a book it's fairly straightforward. For the blog it's a lot more complex because I'm defining the pull quotes in CSS. And there's other interesting things you have to do. I mean, one of the issues when you're reading is you want to see, there are all kinds of subtle things that you don't realise are going on. For example, when you're reading a magazine and there's 3-column text, one of the things that gives a page stillness is the fact that the baselines of the text in the 3 adjacent columns are all the same. All the text is sitting on the same baselines. Right?
What do you mean by that? By baselines?
The baseline, say where the lowercase b or the lowercase n sits. It's all sitting on a baseline.
You have one line
Right.
that goes through the whole
Yeah,
page.
that's the baseline right here. And if you drew one line underneath,
You would go
that,
through
it would go through them all. And that gives a page stillness. It's actually quite difficult to do that because this is a different type size. And there's some space in here and there's some different spacing in here. So what you have to do, for example, is make each of these different elements a multiple of the line height of the standard body text. And if you do that,
Then you get it.
then they always hit.
Interesting.
Now there are ways you could do that automatically. So there's a whole bunch of things like that where I'm collecting a set of requirements that I'm going to be going back to the Explorer team and to the tools guys and saying, hey, I'd love it if it could do this, and it could do this. And you know.
Right.
However, having said that, I'm really delighted with how readable I've managed to get stuff already in IE8. Even though I've had to resort to using bolt-on things like JavaScript for multi-column and hyphenation just now, these things will come.
Yeah.
We're still in early days yet. I mean, it took 400 years from when Gutenberg invented movable metal type. It took 400 years before Ottmar Mergenthaler and James O'Clefane invented the linotype machine that would set a whole line of type.
Oh, fascinating.
Have you ever seen those machines, by the way? They're incredible. There's some great videos out on the web. There's a fantastic video, it's about 45 minutes long, explaining the workings of a linotype machine. It's unbelievable, these things. You know, there's all these arms that move, and there's a vat of molten metal at the back of it, and it sprays it into molds, and you know, it's incredible. I'll collect a bunch of URLs like that up
that'd
as
be great.
well, and I'll throw those together for people who are interested. I started work in the print industry in a room, well, in a newspaper that was still using hot metal, so they were still using those linotype machines, and that's how I learned to do typeset. Well, I didn't do the typesetting; I did the markup.
Mhm.
and the editing and